Okay, this would have been one of the important entrances, I would assume, but not the main one. I think certainly not where we go in. I think it's off to the right. Notice the narrow slots in that parapet. And as you can see, there was a moat around it. And to some degree, this slope was a little bit of an inhibitor, but not much. Certainly not compared to many of the others that we've seen. And in this part of the wall, it changes apparently. This part to the right, presumably with those slots was occupied, so they had built this part up, or at least that portion of it. There are also two doors, but maybe the rest of it is normal hillside. The bigger slot for cannon, of course. What a joke. Close the whole goddamn fortress. Jesus. What a joke. What a joke. So this is St. Spa's Church right across from the castle. So this is the most impressive view you'll get out of this castle right now. So that's the church. Has a nice quiet little courtyard. Apparently that's the church, although there's some place, the building on the right requires 120 to take a look. When we drop down from the church, we're immediately here in the market. So I think this is one of the hammams, or bathhouses, from some perspective. It was built in the second half 15th century, divided into sections for men and women, 900 square meters, restored in 1948. This is not the entrance, and I don't know what this plaque says. I get a little bit closer to it. This may be the original entrance here. Dorm, unless there's one I can't see. It looks like it's just for men. There's another dorm through there, so this is really quite a large one. It's long is what it is. From here we get a much better view of the domes. Sure is an elaborate layout, and with the domes it looks so pretty, even though it doesn't have much in the way of color or even design for that. This is also a National Gallery, and I don't know what this arched portion was. It looks like it was built out this way. By moving from the center entrance to the first large room, I have to look at a diagram to know what this is for, but notice here are some of the side rooms that were talked about. These would have been much warmer. You wonder if that was painted. I'm assuming it wasn't. But there is some corner detail left. I'm guessing that this side portion here was probably where the ovens were. Here, a relatively narrow room between that first and then the large dorm area over here to the right. These are used for bathrooms. I like that idea. Notice that the dome thing was a little bit more complex there too. Here it looks like the normal way it originally was done was to be plastered. So everything was white, and then they could put decoration on it also. And then maybe it looks like you can see what would have been panels up there. But that just may be allusions to the inner construction. The entryway, you can see where it's plastered. But now the thing that's interesting is if you look at this panel closely, and I'll get up there more closely, you can see that there's a considerable amount of detail up there of some sort. Probably graphic. Shouldn't be flowers or anything like that. But we can certainly see something up there. even more so right here. So if this were plastered over, or is that a remnant of plaster, would that detail have shown more starkly, and would it have been painted? I think so. There may even be allusions to colors that we can see, just hints of them. And again, this double arch, or this notch between the arch sides, wonder what the function was. Here you can see that they've carefully not shown, delineated the part that had the stucco that had design on it, and then just the regular structural walls, which is all we usually see. And there you can see how, when they stucco over, even the design that's carved into the underlying cement, you still get that detail, that relief. Notice just the simple designs that are used to create aesthetic value. So now we're moving into the room in between, to the left, the room in between the entry and a third room. It's large, not as large as the other one. Maybe the other one we were in was for men, this one for women. Although they supposedly have identical services, if you will. And notice how these doorways angle in under another shallow dome that we saw on the outside. And the same on this side, again, for specific functions, no doubt. Okay, now we're entering into a third room, about the same size as the last one we were in. And here, a smaller dome. Again, were there ovens over here or something? I don't know. Another room going back in there under probably another dome. But finally we come into the last room, and it's the same size as the other. It would be wonderful to see a small model of what these would have looked like, how they were decorated, what accoutrements like benches and tubs and so forth were in here. Hello. Hello. Notice how the sound takes my deep voice and resonates or bounces it off the walls. Not quite echoes, but something akin to it. Again, again. What kind of a hubbub would there have been in here in the way of noise when people were actively using this? The room that we want to go in, some of the Roman sewer pipe. And look, it looks like water would have come out of there. And look, it came out on all four sides through that plumbing in the wall. So this is outstanding. We get an idea of how they actually used plumbing there, 90-degree L. Now there's cement on it, see, showing that they did seal them. Whereas the architect said that in the individual buildings, the small pipes were not sealed, they just tightly fit. But I question that. He may still be right in some situations, but if you can build these kind of ceramic pots and ceramic pipe, certainly you can have some kind of little cement that you put around there to make sure you've got a good seal. But this is the first time that I've seen pipes going through the wall. And notice there are two. Was there a hot and a cold? I don't think so, but maybe. The reason I say no is because the cold would have cooled down the hot, and the Romans would have been smart enough to know that and separate those pipes. But what were these for? Just cleansing? Sit on these benches while slaves or others tossed water on them, or while they poured water on them. And notice, I can, but you can't, this floor, which is probably original, And why did I say Roman? What makes me think it's Roman? At any rate, it's downhill. It slopes to the left, and then the whole thing slopes down that way. So did it pour out of this room and somehow out into the hall and drain out? It'd be interesting to know how they got consistency in size. Notice we can see at least 2 different sizes right there. But how they get consistency of the pipe? Was there a form that they ultimately used to kind of like tap the end of that and make sure it was perfect? Maybe that's where the hot water spilled into, and then they filled it with these jugs and then poured it over themselves. When you first enter the building, there's this long arched cavity, if you will, or room. I don't know if that steps probably is new. It was built in the second half 15th century, divided into sections for men and women, 900 square meters, restored in 1948. I was looking for a church, but I saw this mosque, so I thought I'd come up and take a look at it.